So I've opened the PowerPoint file in show mode, and you can see that there is one graph for each of the SOIs we have in our study here: Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, Boost, T-Mobile, Straight Talk, Cricket, Metro PCS, US Cellular, and then, I'm going to get to this later, we have three what we call validation primes in the study, but I'll get to those in a little bit. Let's go back to the very first one, the Sprint. Notice that the graphs you're familiar with, the graphs show the explicit and the implicit associations, plotted as bars, and we have the association scores, etc., which we've covered in an earlier video. The title has the actual name of the SOI in it, Sprint, the actual name of the outcome variable that you input as you were building the study. In this one, it's amount pay, and what it is, the amount that people said they would pay for this SOI across all respondents if they were given $100, and they had to allocate that $100 for this SOI versus two others that they were exposed to in their survey. And here's the target. The total sample is what we're looking at here because it's the full report. Now, we talked about all of the scoring and the highlighting and all of that. We also have a little summary of the main scores or the main results here at the lower right-hand corner of each graph. And then we also have narrative bullet points that describe what you're seeing for this SOI given all the numbers. In the first set of bullet points, we talk about the explicit associations. In the second set, we talk about the implicit associations. Here, we talk about the correlation or the consistency between the positive and the explicit and the implicit associations. And then we talk about how the associations are impacting the outcome variable here. I will let you know, and this is very important, that all of this narrative is automatically generated in your reports. We didn't write this up later when we saw the data. It comes to you in this way. There's obviously some template narrative, but then the numbers for each of the SOIs are piped into the narrative, so it reads like a story for each SOI that you have in your study. So we feel like that's a good feature to have. If you want to go back and change the narrative, you can certainly do that. These are PowerPoint files that you can change at your own will and to your own desire, and the way that you want to read the results. But we do it for you to make it quick and easy in case you don't have much time. So all of the graphs are basically the same except for the numbers that you get for each of the SOIs in your study. And you get one graph for each SOI and each outcome variable that you have in your study. This study, we only had one outcome variable, so there's really only one set of SOI graphs. All right, let me get to this last set of graphs, because we've really never talked about this at this point in our demo, and we should. So these are graphs showing different representations of SOIs than the ones you input in your study. The two most important are a baby and a spider. And these are what we call validation primes. In every study, we take about 100 people and we expose them to the validation primes as opposed to the SOI primes that you input for your study. Why do we do that? We do that because we know basically what we should be getting in terms of implicit and explicit associations for a baby and a spider. Specifically for the baby, we should be seeing consistent implicit and explicit associations that are positive. And we're seeing this for the baby in this study. You see that the baby is strongly positive, both implicitly and explicitly. Not too much negative going on. And if you want to look at specific attributes, we see that delighted is the attribute explicitly that is strongest associated with the baby. When we look at the spider, we expect to get just the opposite. We expect to get strong explicit and implicit negative associations. And we're seeing that here in our study with the spider. So this gives us a degree of confidence, that is a degree of validation, that our implicit and explicit response tasks were working in the study. Therefore, when you go and you look at the various SOIs that you're looking at, you can be more confident that the response tasks were working for you. In terms of the cheeseburger, we just throw this in as a third one because we have to have three. We're experimenting with one that perhaps will get different implicit and explicit associations. We're finding that cheeseburger is pretty much positive as well. But the baby and the spider in our studies are most important to validate that the response tasks are working. All right, now we're going to move on. I'm not going to go into the tables and the full data again because they're tedious and I think you get the point with those. I just wanted to show you what the graphs look like in an actual study and to tell you that the narrative is automatically generated in our studies. Now we're going to move on to the filtered results or the filtered scoring in our next video.